there. Today we've got a story for you, and uh, one of the things I like about this one, it's not a very long story, but it's got some real good stuff in it, and it shows a couple of things that are a little bit funny, but also it's one of the stories that you have to back up a little bit before the story for all of the story to make sense. So in this one's about Jesus, and it is uh, where we left him in an earlier lesson where he had healed someone who had leprosy, a skin disease. And you might remember from that one that he told the guy healed not to tell anyone who did it. Now, he had a reason for this, and as you may recall in that one, the fella who had come to him had leprosy, said, you can heal me if you want to. And Jesus said, I want to, and touched him. And the guy was all well. And Jesus said, don't tell anyone about this. And the guy went around and told everybody about it. Now, I think part of it is he couldn't help himself because he had had leprosy. He was now able to go back to his family, and he was just excited about it. Um, the other part, because he had told everybody about this, it caused some problems for Jesus because now all these people were out looking for him and trying to find him. They think, somebody who can heal leprosy or, any of the skin diseases that they had that were so bad. People would really want to go see him. Of course, the reason for Jesus doing this, it seems like, is that he had a plan for things and he was wanting to tell people about God and healing people. While he liked helping people, the main reason for him being able to do these great things nobody else could do was so it would confirm that he was from God, and what he said, you could believe him. So after this time, it was hard for Jesus to go into any town without people just running up to him and mobbing him and, looking for him to do things for them. So he would have to stay out in kind of lonely places and sort of slip into town to do things. Well, one of these times he slipped into town, but it was his hometown. It was his where he now had his base, where his family lived. And that was Capernaum. So he'd gone into town. Well, people heard about it, but in this town, they really like him. And so with them, yes, there were people interested in going there for healing and that sort of thing, but also he could teach people there. And so he was in this house, and the house was crowded. I'm not sure how they could figure this out. And people who studied this said that you might could fit 50 people in the house. I didn't realize houses could be that big back then, but they could fit that. But people would go to the houses where people were, and other people would show up and they'd look in the doorway or stand around and try to hear. And that was considered okay. It wasn't impolite for you to go in and try to see somebody like that. And in this case, of course, Jesus' purpose is to talk to people. So he's fine with them being there. And there's some teachers of the law there. And when you hear about these guys, some of the time they are kind of mean, and because they're trying to find things wrong with Jesus. It seems like these guys in particular had not already made up their minds on, is Jesus okay or is he not okay? But then something happens that's out of the ordinary. And while Jesus is talking, there's some people who bring their friend to be healed by Jesus. Now, they bring him there because the man's paralyzed. He's not able to walk. And we don't know if he can move his arms or not, but he cannot get around by himself. And he has his mat, which might have been a blanket, might have been something woven together, and that's what he would be on. Usually, people in that situation would have to beg for help, and they would be placed out. If they were in Jerusalem, they would be near the temple. Not sure where they would be, but would have to be in a public area if they were in some other town. And they would just have to beg people to give them a few coins here and there so they could live because they had no way of earning their own living. So they were in desperate need of help. And this man in particular was one of those. So normally in those situations, if he was begging, he would have a mat to lie on, and that was really the only comfort he had. Um, but his friends bring him in, so he does have friends, and there are four of them, and so I'm thinking each one took a corner of the mat, and they were carrying it. Well, they got to the house where Jesus was teaching, and they could not get in. Well, they were kind of smart and they really wanted to get this guy to Jesus. So they climbed onto the roof of the house, and the houses wouldn't have been real high up, and dug through the roof. And houses were built a lot differently than they are now. A lot of times they would use this dried mud or dried clay as the building material, and others would have tiles on them. In this case, this had tiles, and they pulled the tiles away and they lowered this guy right down in front of Jesus. Now, this had to have been funny to some people. Other people would have been irritated because, Jesus is teaching and there's all this stuff falling down from the ceiling as they're digging through it. And others will have seen how funny it was. From some of the things you hear that Jesus did in those days, I've got to think he thought it was sort of funny himself. But here they were, they lower this guy down in front of Jesus. Well, Jesus uh, sees something important that most people do not see in this. He knows what the most important thing is for this paralyzed man. Even the paralyzed man might not be thinking of this because all the people think, well, this man needs to be healed. He needs to be whole so that he can walk and have a job and take care of himself and all that. But Jesus realizes the most important thing in this man's life and in any person's life is to be forgiven for the bad things that he's done in his life. And so he says to the man, your sins are forgiven. That's the most important thing. And I'm not sure anybody realized that. Now, the teachers of the law got offended because they're thinking to themselves, wait a second, this is blasphemy. No one can forgive sins except God. Now, the word blasphemy is a big word and kind of means one of two things. One is that you are saying something bad about God. Well, Jesus wasn't doing that, so this must be the other one. And the other one is um, claiming to be able to do something that only God can do or is allowed to do. And so they think it's this one that, he's just a man. He can't forgive sins because only God can forgive sins. They still don't understand exactly who Jesus is, that he and the Father are one, and that he can forgive sins. Well, he knows what they're thinking, and he looks to them and says, okay, tell me this. What's easier to say to this man? Your sins are forgiven, or get up and walk. He says, now, just so that you know I have the authority, he turns to the man and says, get up, take your mat, and walk. The man is healed. He gets up, he takes his mat, and he walks, and he's out of there. And this one time, you don't hear the teachers of the law getting angrier at Jesus. They seem to have been impressed by this, and certainly the people of Capernaum were, because it's like, oh, he's done something else here that's great. And they are amazed at this. It's sort of like they like Jesus from the beginning, and the more he's around and the more he teaches and shows them things, the stronger they are in their feelings for him. Um, you could see why he would go out to places and come back to Capernaum because it really makes you feel better when there's somebody who likes you and they encourage you. That's one of the things we learn from this lesson is we can encourage people. We may not be able to heal people, but we can still encourage people. And Jesus got something from that. The sad thing is that he would go to other places and they wouldn't always react the same way. We've seen that already, and we'll see more of that coming up. But for this one, I'm going to leave the story right here because things are going to shift after this, um, and we will see other things that start happening with Jesus, other things that he is doing. But for now, I will leave you with this tie. And I picked this one because it shows Mickey Mouse doing all different kinds of sports. Because it makes me think that once the paralyzed man was healed, he can now do just about anything. All these things he was not able to do, now he can do them. And so he is able to praise Jesus for healing him. But I think over time, it might be that he learns to praise Jesus for the forgiveness of his sins. And as he matures, that would definitely be something of importance to him. So, with that, I will end and I hope to see you next time. Bye.